My name is Meredithe Meyer. I am an associate editor here at BizTimes, and I'm also a reporter. I cover restaurants, entertainment, sports, hospitality, tourism, retail, just a few things, but the fun stuff we like to say. And I am so excited to be the moderator of our panel today, making it in Milwaukee. And we're going to be focusing on how these ladies next to me have risen up in their career, kind of the winding journeys they've all taken to where, to how they've gotten to where they are today, and kind of the lessons they've learned along the way. I've asked them to kind of share some nuggets of wisdom for those of you in the audience that are pursuing similar career paths or looking to make a big switch in your career, or just continuing to develop as a leader. So I will introduce the panel briefly. I'm just going to state their names and their titles, and then I'm going to let them kind of later expand on who they are and what they do currently. But just to quickly introduce, we have Jennifer Ryan, Vice President of Strategic Communications and Public Relations at Northwestern Mutual. We have Abby Gilman. She's the owner of Little Village Play Café in Wauwatosa, soon to open. And then we have Lori Rosenthal, the Vice President and Principal and Group Leader of GRAEF. And then we have Karen Hung, the CEO of Silver Rock Consulting. So with that, let's get started with our discussion. So as I said, I'm going to let you ladies kind of tell us more about who you are, what you do currently, professionally, of course, and if you want to throw some information about, kind of who you are as a person and what your personal life looks like right now, that would be great. Jennifer, should we start with you?
Sure. Great to be here, first of all. I appreciate the opportunity. So my role is at Northwestern Mutual, and I'm responsible for all external communications. So that's media and public relations, corporate reputation, and all communications around our diversity, inclusion, and ESG efforts of the company. In addition to that, I'm a mom of 2 kids. I have a 15-year-old, and I have a 10-year-old, soon to be 11, and I live in the New Berlin area. So again, happy to be here.
So thank you. Abby?
I'm Abby Gilman. I am the future owner of the Little Village Play Café, and very humbled to be amongst so many women who have made it in Milwaukee. I don't know when I'll really feel like I've made it in Milwaukee, but very exciting to be here today. In addition to opening up the Little Village Play Café, I'm also the mother of 2 little boys, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and one on the way in a couple of months, so if I sound out of breath, that's the baseline. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. I traded in my hard hat yesterday and actually put on a dress today, and constantly wearing different hats, literally.
Lori Rosenthal, thank you for having me. I'm Vice President, Principal, one of the owners of GRAEF, a mid-sized engineering firm. I'm a structural engineer, and I run a group that does all of our vertical design in Milwaukee. So that's structural engineering, MEP, and industrial architecture. I have married, and we have 5 adult kids between us. But they're all off and launched, and we have a rescue dog at home, and we love to travel as our passion when we're not working, and been to all 50 states and 35 countries, and that's what we do when we're not working.
50 states. It's pretty aspirational. Hi, I'm Karen Hung. Can you all hear me in the back? I just want to do a sound check. All right, great. I'm the founder and CEO of Silver Rock Consulting, and the short version of my career history is I was in large corporations like GE and Citibank and Johnson & Johnson, and so it was quite a departure to move from all that infrastructure and complexity to different complexity in founding my own firm. just a really quick story. I remember one day as I was starting up, I thought, you know, I had an IT issue. It's like, call IT is usually the response, right? And I had to look around. I was like, who do I call? I don't have anybody, so I better try hard booting my laptop. So quite a departure, but that's a little bit of my background. I've worked in marketing, strategy, and innovation, and Silver Rock Consulting works with clients on transformational strategies and business models. I have a 10-year-old son, first day back at school week, so that's an adjustment for everybody. We're happy that it's going relatively well. We're trying new sports too.
Okay, thank you, ladies. That was great. I would now like to just backtrack a little bit to talk about kind of the journey and kind of the major milestones or inflection points in your careers that really informed your current place. You know, some of you have had a lot of shifts, some recent, some in the past. You all have made your way, and you're all in different places, which is super interesting. But I would love to just hear, you know, the brief kind of background, and then if you could really pull out some, you know, major milestones that maybe you shifted around or, you know, had to make a change around. So Jennifer, should we start with you again?
Sure.
We can go down the line again.
Sure. So,
Okay.
I knew I wanted to be in a role in communications, and so I started on the public relations side, and my initial job was actually at an agency. I was working at a PR firm. It's named Edelman, and it's one of the largest in the world. And I wanted to work with a lot of different clients, and I wanted to be able to sink myself in and really build my skills and my capabilities. From there, after 4 years, I actually went down to Texas, and I relocated down to Texas A&M University, and that was a personal choice because I was following my soon-to-be husband at the time, and went into university relations, so it's still communications type work, but in an educational setting. And we decided to come back to the Milwaukee area, so I went from just PR firm to integrated marketing advertising agency, and I worked at Kramer Crossell for nearly 8 years, which is located in the 3rd Ward, to see a breadth and depth of marketing and communications come to life. And then I got to a pivotal point in my 30s where I said, do I want to continue down the path of working in more of that consulting agency world, or do I want to try corporate America? And I really wanted corporate on my resume, so that was a pivotal choice for me to say, I'm going to join Northwestern Mutual, and I'm going to sink myself into communications work there. And I've been there for the last 12 years, and I've gone deep in that particular area of business, more or less, but I've had several roles within my time there, all within communications to continue to build my skill set. So.
Abby?
So if you would have asked me 5 or even 3 or 10 years ago if I would open my own business, I would have said that's crazy. I had always been focused on, you know, I'm one of those achievers too, and it is a blessing and a curse, but I'm always focused on the next step, building my resume. I've hopscotched a lot between agencies and corporate environments, and learning a lot along the way, but always looking to like take the next step. And no, I was not prepared at all when my first son came, and suddenly my priorities of achieving and how I had defined myself professionally as this achiever were really shooken. Like, oh, also I have to care for a human, and oh, yourself too, and what about my friendships, and I have all of these deadlines and goals. And so it really caused me to like reflect a little bit internally. And then of course, COVID, the pandemic hit, and I'll put my dollar in the Boys and Girls jar. And like that just put everything on steroids. And I thought, it really became very abundantly clear how few resources there were and how many other working moms and not working moms were in the same position as me, feeling a little bit isolated and conflicted about what defined them and how they were feeling accomplished in their careers and defining accomplishments. And so I had thought a little bit about how I fit into this, like how can I tap into my passion and really use the skills that I developed to serve this need. And that's sort of what put me in the direction of opening this Play Café, which is a space where children can play, especially in the harsh winters and weather in Wisconsin, and parents can also have a community and work together and support one another in a very holistic and community building setting. And so when I talked to my friend who's in the audience today, I had mentioned this idea, and she's like, wow, you should really do that. And I had said to someone, I'm feeling really energized and am I being manic about this? And they said, no, Abby, that is what passion feels like, and you should really tap into that. And so, yes, in December we'll open the Little Village Play Café, which is the first play cafe in Wauwatosa. A few weeks before that, I'll have my third child. So I don't know if the work-life balance is really something that I'm accomplishing here, but that's sort of where I was and where I'm going.
So in a lot of ways, I've had a fairly linear, traditional career. I guess when you go to engineering school, often you end up being an engineer. I have an undergrad in engineering. I became a structural engineer, working in consulting right away. I worked on my master's degree in engineering at night, and was very involved in multiple professional organizations, technical organizations, so very technical in the beginning of my career. But from the time I was in college, being involved in these organizations, and it was a great networking opportunity. I knew GRAEF since I was probably 20 years old. He's one of the founders of my firm. Recently passed in just the last couple of weeks. And at these events, once he said, hey, if you want to make a change, why don't you consider coming to GRAEF? And 28 or 29 years ago, I did that, continued my career there. I taught for a bit at night at MSOE. I led technical committees on a national level. I led some organizations more locally for ASCE, professional society organizations. Been involved in a number of things as my career in my firm progressed. I then started to manage more projects, really got involved with managing large multidiscipline industrial projects was my passion, and along the way you kind of have to decide what things you want to focus on. So I didn't coin it, somebody did, that you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once. So deciding what things I wanted to continue to pursue, and that was managing large work, eventually leading some groups, and we're all going through this pandemic. The last time we had a large recession, which was very huge, especially in our industry, in the 2009 era, 50% of the architects in the country were laid off. 50% of the entire industry. So that's the shock wave that went through the consulting industry. And I remember going, oh, what am I going to do now? And talking to my boss, and there was this opportunity at the airport here, and it was a baggage handling project. I thought, I should go after that. I said, well, why would you do that? You've never worked on a public project. You've never worked at an airport. You've only done private work. You've never done a formal RFP. You've never done a formal interview. And of course, at least he let me do it anyway, and led a large project at the airport here. And so now, when your bags, many of you might not even remember, they used to scan them in front of those ticket counters. Now it just goes to this new building behind the scenes. And that started GRAEF's aviation practice, and so we do that kind of work across the country. So, a different kind of time, but the pivots that can be involved, and so I've stayed involved in those kinds of things. Went on to lead groups, became a principal in the firm, and I love to do a variety of things, and happy that GRAEF lets me do that. So I'm involved in things that are very HR or very nerdy technical or anywhere in between, and have a lot of fun doing it.
Oh, Lord, so we have you to thank for safe luggage when our luggage lands. That's right.
These days, not so much. I don't know. I would carry on myself.
That's great. We're all here for you, the audience, today. So I would just invite you, just take a moment and write down on some piece of paper 1 or 2 strengths that you think you have that you want to continue to develop. And as you listen to us today, maybe there's ways that you can think about how you can embellish them. So just take a moment, write down 1 or 2 of your own strengths. I just want to invite you to do that. As you're finishing that up, I'll round out with my career background. And as I was listening to this amazing panel, I was thinking, wow, they were really thinking about their strengths and where and how their career path took them. And so I would just start with this in terms of my history. It was really thinking about my strengths. My strengths were around leadership and loving to work with people. And so I've had, from a macro sense, I've moved across a lot of different sectors, and I've also moved across a lot of different functions, but all with the intention of really thinking about how do I help people, how do I help teams to achieve the things that they can achieve. And so where I started was functionally in human resources. So how does a HR person become a global chief marketing officer to a head of strategy and innovation is quite an expansive pathway, and it was really quite exciting to be able to journey along that. And what I would say is, what I learned along the way that was really powerful is how can I bring my best work to contribute to the problem at hand in terms of who I am in that. And so I'll give you a couple examples as I share with you a little bit of the trail. So I started off in HR in Chicago, worked for a major retailer, and boy, that is, retail's a grind. You're there day in, day out. Weekends, what's that? My world felt a little bit off. But what was really exciting was like being in a high-paced, high-pulse environment. And then I decided I wanted to go into corporate America because I thought that was like the it thing to do. So I joined Baxter in Chicago. So when you drive down 94, right, you see on the right side this big Baxter headquarters. So I was there, and it was pretty exciting to be part of an organization that was also doing good to help change lives, save lives, and continue there. From there, I went to Johnson & Johnson in New Jersey, and I moved, it was still in healthcare, but moved to consumer products. And I actually worked for a really exciting area, but very critical for all of us in the room, was FemCare. And what was interesting in that, and I'll just share one quick story, is to see the number of men who were engineering products that women were wearing. I thought, oh my gosh. I remember early on, I was like, well, where are the women? So there were very few women in the R&D area. One of them actually rose to the rank to be vice chair at J&J. But that was a really kind of an awakening moment where I just realized a number of things, including the fact that I was very entrepreneurial at that time. So I was starting new programs, doing a lot of things that were outside of my swim lane. And so that's one of the areas that, and ways that I got to really expand. So the example I'll give you there is, when I was still in HR, but I was very interested in marketing. So I worked a lot with the marketing team, and I was given responsibility for employee services. So we were adding all sorts of services. Like we had our own little business. We added, dry cleaning for our employees. We added oil change. Oil change, coming to your parking lot, changing oil. That was so innovative back then. I was like, oh my gosh, we can get rid of that headache, right? Of the time and figuring out. So we were adding all these resources and solutions to pain points that people didn't even identify. And without knowing it then, that was when I was starting to think about, ways and different ways to really solve for people's problems. And never thinking I'd go out on my own. But that was an exciting time, and I was more excited about that than some of my job responsibilities. So I went from there to a few different other pathways, but I also went back to business school to get my MBA, and then out of there I went to Citibank in New York, and loved that fast pace, loved the big city life. loved really thinking about the big problems we were solving. So I realized that I was good at that. And what I also realized is when it got to maintenance, when we're solving the big things, I wasn't so good at that. And I didn't enjoy that. And so that was a moment of where can I be really excellent to deliver kind of the big solutions, and where can somebody else come and pick up who are really good at running things? And both are important skills, right? So that's an example there. And when I was at Citi, I actually was moved into an area where I was running a global P&L and with people around the world. And we were doing foreign exchange and just really understanding kind of how money works, right? And so that was an important learning as well. And so I'll just pause for a quick moment to talk about skills, where can I leverage my strengths was kind of the big pathway. 2, functionally, what did I need to learn? And then 3, in my sector, what is it that I needed to learn to really contribute? So I'll fast forward. I ended up switching career paths, obviously. Went into marketing, went into retail. Ann Taylor, anybody? I was vice president of marketing for Ann Taylor. It was really fun. It's like, don't bother paying me, just put it in my credit card account. It was really, a lot of fun and just a great time, but just we were also challenged. One area was high growth, one area was a turnaround, and really having to think through. I see a lot of nods, like how do you connect with the market to have the consumer, how are we connecting with the market to be relevant, but also making sure we're presenting ourselves in the right way. So we did a lot around that. We introduced new channels, and then ultimately I ended up at Land's End as the Global Chief Marketing Officer. But in there's a few other steps. So I'll just pause on that and hand it back over to our moderator. But I just want to have you all feel inspired and empowered coming out of this session.
Yeah, thank you for that, Karen. I want to maybe dive deeper into the idea of strengths. And this question is for anyone, but I'm wondering, how you've gone about developing the strengths that you knew you had kind of going into your career. What does it look like to develop those existing strengths, and then what are some of the strengths or new skills you've adopted throughout your career, and what did that look like? Saying yes to big opportunities. Did you surprise yourself with what you're able to do in a new role? I kind of just want to know, how did you develop, and then how did you build on to your strengths?
I'll go. I would say one of my strengths is always be learning. So, as a student, you're always learning. I taught at Marquette for 5 years, emerging digital media. And as a teacher, I was always learning from my students too. Every step throughout my career has been a constant learning evolution. And I think that has served me well in this new business adventure as well, because there is so much I don't know. I don't know about how to secure funding for a small business, but thank you, Wibbick. I'm another Wibbick client. Thank you for helping me along the way. I don't know how to put an architecture plan together or present to the city commission to get approval or permitting, but there's contractors. Every step of the way, there are so many resources there to help you, and especially women. We have to support each other and not be afraid to reach out to each other. So I think not being afraid of the things that you don't know is something that I've learned to embrace, and instead of it being an obstacle or a hard stop, it's trying to work around it and tap into people who do know. I don't remember the end of your question, but that is something that always be learning has been one of my strengths.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm sure you've really had to adopt some just new skills and mindsets as you've gone on to be an entrepreneur for the first time. Yeah, that's awesome.
And to be vulnerable about it and not ashamed that you don't know something, because we can't all be experts at everything. So just own it and be transparent about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else on that question, the strengths you have and what you developed?
What I loved, one of the points was, not to be afraid to get out of your lane. Because there might be something over here that you're really passionate about and you're also really good at, So while you're, trying to make sure that you're bringing real value to your organization, looking for the things that are clicking with you are probably the things that you're best at, and not being afraid to kind of drop the things that you're not best at, because somebody else is going to be best at those things, and let them do those things. I think has been really helpful.
Great. Yeah, delegating. Right.
I'll just add to this constant learning is really fantastic, Abby. I mean, because nobody's born a CEO. Like, nobody's born whatever. So we all evolve to that place. And I would also add learning to take risk. And the risk I think about is fear of failure. There's also this piece around fear of success. What happens? But like, what happens? What happens when I get there and there's new things I have to figure out and new stresses, right? And so I think those can be reframed to be exciting times, right? Can be reframed to be exciting times. So that's one of the pieces that I've learned along the way. And to do things that were uncomfortable. Like, oh my gosh, can we figure this out? I mean, I was just really inspired by the panel this morning as well, right? Who was it that said, I was putting my head in my hand and trying to say, what do I do for the next hour to help move my organization forward? So to embrace the discomfort. That's the highest learning moment.
So kind of with that, if I were to say what my superpower would be, it's tenacity. So I don't know everything, but I know how to figure stuff out. So that one little example, I knew nothing about airport security or baggage systems or anything, but you know what? It figured it out. I even figured out how to get hired without knowing anything about it. I'm not sure about that one. And we ended up getting some other very large, multi-million-dollar projects before I even finished that one. And after the fact, after we've had great relationships with these clients, and they're still good clients and friends of mine, like, why did you hire me for that? I didn't even finish my first one. I didn't even know if I knew what I was doing. How did you think I knew what I was doing? It's like, oh, that's not why we hired you. I'm like, why did you hire me? Because you wouldn't let it fail. We could tell you are not going to let anything fail, and that's what matters. And the rest you figure out.
Okay. Lori and Jennifer, you both have been at the companies that you currently are for a while, for years. And I would love to know kind of what are the benefits of building a foundation and growing in place, whether that's cultivating relationships, being able to climb the ladder at one company. What have you found are the biggest benefits to staying in place and building a space for yourself at your organizations? Maybe Jennifer, if you want to start.
So I've been at Northwestern Mutual 12 years, so definitely not as long as your employer. And I'll be honest, like when I first joined the organization, it was very different than it is today. We have transformed 100%. And that first year was tough for me, coming from more of an agency setting where I could go to work every day wearing jeans and being very casual to a more formal corporate environment. And it took me about a year to get my swim legs to really feel like, is this the culture I want to be a part of? But there's so much change involved in an organization. If I looked at where we are today versus where we were, again, it's a different company. 50% of the employees at Northwestern Mutual have been at the company less than 5 years. And so you just have seen such dramatic change. And so for me, I've stayed there because one, I've gotten multiple opportunities to try different things. Even though I've been in communications for that amount of time, I've been connected to and aligned to different business units from an internal perspective and then externally across all. So I feel like I get different jobs every 2 years because I'm touching different teams and working with different leaders and helping them communicate the messages that are important to their organizations. And so, I would just say, you are learning every single day, and the company changes and the industry changes and the people change, and you build those relationships. That's what keeps me.
Great.
Yeah, so I think the things that satisfy us or the things that we're thinking about are going to be satisfying our future leaders, right? So always some sort of upcoming opportunity, going from engineering to large project management to group management to large group management to serving on our board. And what I love about what I do is that nobody ever tells me no. Whatever, I figure out some little passion project that's not my lane. Just finished something recently that's totally HR, but collaborated with HR to do this new initiative, and it was really important to the firm. It's important to me. So being in an environment where it allows that flexibility to be able to do these different things, because that's what makes me tick. I need a lot of balls in the air to be happy, and they let me do that. But also, as somebody who's later in their career, part of what I'm passionate about is bringing other leaders up. So I have several of people who have worked for me over the years who I've been able to help evolve. They are now principals of the firm. I have a couple more that I want to make sure that get there before I retire. But investing in them and helping them with their careers along the way is very satisfying to me and very important to me, and a big reason why I'm there is like, how could I leave them? And so someday when I do retire, that's going to be a hard thing. It's going to be, leaving that. But my job now is to get them ready. We have a big leadership transition coming at our firm. Something very transparent, which we're really good about. There are going to be all these opportunities, and helping that next level of leadership get ready to take over is my current passion where I am.
Awesome. What about the rest of you with kind of the role of mentorship and sort of trying to raise the next generation and empower the next generation, especially the next generation of women in your fields? How do you go about, are you a mentor to anyone? Who have you been mentored by? How has that helped you? What's the role that's played in your success?
Yeah, okay. I've seen all the heads turned. I'll start. I'll start the conversation. I think there's a few things to think about mentorship, because there's times that people and women might need mentorship. I would also advocate that we need and want people to come alongside of us to help influence, to be advocates, and to be sponsors. And so from a mentorship standpoint, in my history, I really didn't have a lot of formal mentors. And so what do I do today? What I do are a number of things. One is there are times that I do have more of a formal mentoring relationship. So with one of my clients where I'm an embedded executive team member, I'm connecting with women at a frequency, like maybe it's once every month, once every 2 months, once a quarter, for just touch base and see what's going on in their lives, and to really come alongside of them to be a sounding board or add guidance. A second way I do this is also just informally. Like yesterday I was driving, I thought about somebody and called them, and they used to work for me like 10 years ago, but still, it's like, okay, what's going on? How are you thinking about this, right? And so there's a second way. The informal touches can be as powerful as the formal ones, really. Those are the moments that you catch somebody in their moment of need or thinking. And then the third way is formally, as an executive or a leader, to sponsor somebody. So I've, similar to what Lori was talking about, I've done a lot in terms of helping to promote people, promote women, making sure they're ready. It's not just the promotion, it's setting them up for success, whoever that person is, right? To surround them. And so that's another way. And other ways too is, making sure the women in particular are paid equitably. I remember really going to bat at a time in a company where we weren't paying equitably, and it was also in the context of some financial challenges, but I said it doesn't matter because we're all doing the work. and then being being willing to take some stripes on that. One other example I would share is also another tangible way is to sponsor somebody. To say, hey, I'm going to get behind you and help sponsor you to pay for a graduate MBA level, right? Or to really help advocate for women on boards. And that's my current passion. And how do we think about elevating women and actually nominating women and encouraging those conversations? A lot of times what we say behind the scenes is just as impactful, if not more impactful, to say, yeah, that person, they're great, right? And here's why. And here's why you should consider them. So those are the different ways that I think all of us can do that.
I'll just quickly build on that, but it sounds like we're like next to a stand-up comedian. They're having so much fun. They should all like laugh really loud so that I think those are all amazing examples of how to be a strong mentor, and I think it goes both ways. You know, I'm in the middle of my career and my profession, so not just mentoring the next generation, but also having a really close touch with mentors who can lead me and being a good listener and learning from the experiences that they've had and how I can, you know, be aware of some of those landmines and not be too intimidated by them. And it doesn't matter what stage of your career you're in. I was 25 when I started teaching a course at Marquette about social media and emerging media, and I have this huge imposter syndrome. Like, I look like I belong on campus here. How could I be leading a class? But one of my biggest accomplishments is seeing those students who, you know, were able to relate to me and were able to have this really one-on-one conversation and learn from each other, succeed. They've gone on to work for Facebook and NASA and the Ellen DeGeneres Show, and I think like, wow, I've made it because they've made it, and just being open on both sides, open to listening and learning, but also not being afraid to share your perspective as a mentor as well.
In our just last few minutes here, I just want to kind of focus on the present. Obviously there's a lot of discussion about kind of disruption. You know, are you a disruptor? Are you being disrupted? Also work-life balance, lots of things, of course. The kind of the state of the you know, business environment and world is a little chaotic. So I would just love to know from each of you, what are you working on currently to become better, you know, in your current positions in your career, or maybe it's taking care of yourself better. What is your current focus, and how are you kind of grounding yourselves during this time of change and disruption? Yeah, it's a very open-ended question, but I'm hoping we can maybe allow the audience to kind of maybe hear some words of wisdom there as well. Anyone can start, maybe Jennifer.
Yeah, so in the communications world, there has been so much societal change in the last 24 months. Everyone knows that. So it has definitely given a lot of stress to my area, because employees want to know, like, what's your point of view on a specific topic. And the Edelman Trust Barometer talks about this too. You know, employees and organizations want to see their company lead in certain spaces, and so there's been a lot that we've been, you know, wrestling with internally. So I would say that's been an area of focus for me and my teams. An area of focus too is just to make sure I've got the right team members on my team and leading in a different way as well, building trust and recognizing I don't have all the answers. And I need to make sure I am tapping into the right experts on a personal front, kind of going to that angle. You know, we just went through a reorganization in our department and working on my own development plan, which includes better work-life balance. And I am being, you know, very focused on that. I have accountability coaches to help me along. As someone who wants to drive, you know, you do get tired every once in a while, and it is okay to go to sleep early and wake up the next morning, because this will be here in the morning. So, hope that answers your question.
Disruption can be so scary, you know, like I think if you all reflect on where you were when the pandemic began, I think it was very intimidating and no one really knew what would happen, but I think those moments, those scary moments really force us out of our comfort zone, and they certainly forced me out of my comfort zone professionally and personally as a mother and a wife and a friend. And I think listening to that a little bit and not being afraid to embrace that being vulnerable and embracing that afraid feeling, and then thinking about how you can use that to energize yourself or give back to your community or whatever circle it is that you can impact. So yeah, I think turning disruption into being a disruptor is,
So it's been a very unsettling time, obviously, and we went from a firm, when this was all hitting, nobody knew what was going to happen, and it was the world ending, and we're in these big shifts, and as it turns out, we ended up getting these ginormous projects and became probably busier than we've ever been, which was pretty unexpected at the very beginning of this. And even helping people through that has been quite a challenge. The first time in my career, my whole job in the last couple of years is helping people say no and creating boundaries. So I said I'm going to walk around the office with a t-shirt that says I know things, I-N-O things, meaning we can't do everything, we're going to burn everybody out, we only have so much to sustain. And in conversations with people that have a challenge with burnout, which is a lot of us, it's like, if I asked you to work 100 hours a week, would you do it? Please say no. You can't. It's not sustainable. And for so many of our people, like, okay, whatever you're doing right now, I don't care what the number is. It might be 60 hours a week, it might be 55, it might be 42. I can tell whatever that place is, now whether it's hours or it's the kind of things you're working on, it's too much, it's not sustainable. You need to ratchet it out. First you need to acknowledge there is a limit, and then you need to get you to a sustainable place. In our world, that means being more selective about your opportunities. You can't say yes to everything. We go through our whole careers, more work, more work, more work. We're at a place with talent shortages and so on that there's a limit. So trying to help, the rest of our colleagues create that balance and make it okay to say no.
Yeah, well, in terms of disruption, a lot of learning, right? I would tell you as different than a corporate environment, because I've gone through peaks and valleys and different corporations and different economic trends, that as an entrepreneur, you feel every bump. And so the analogy is difference between driving a luxury car versus a sports car. Like the sports car, when you hit the bump, you feel it. And so during the early stages of the pandemic, I'm so grateful for one of the clients. We had a big engagement, but our revenue stream dried up. And I thought, oh dear God, is this it? It's hard. And for 4 months, we didn't have any revenue coming in. And I remember early on, I said to the team, I know there's a lot of worry. And I'm worried too. But we are going to hold the team together. And so we honored that, and I think it just kind of gave some peace at the time because we had some cash reserves that we could draw on. So there was that reality, and what was really amazing is how we pulled together to really create. We were innovating, new solutions. We were thinking about new ways of working together, and we took some risks. Not all of it panned out, actually. Actually, most of it didn't pan out. But what we learned from that in trying to build new relationships is what worked and what didn't. So that's one piece of that story. The other piece of that story, as I also sat on different boards, is really seeing organizations grapple with big decisions. Right? Do we vote to keep the lights on? Do we vote, how do we vote, right? How do we vote? Do we make financial decisions, which at some point you do need to, right? Because if you don't have means, you can't make payroll, just to be very straight about that. But it's also around, can you still make the strategic decisions? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And do you make people decisions? Absolutely. You can still make decisions for culture, for strategy, as you're making short-term decisions to make sure it's directionally correct. And that was kind of the biggest thing of reframing how we were thinking through decisions in the range of different experiences I was going through. And the last thing I just kind of leave with that is, the agility. I leave you with two things around the disruption. One is, I came up with this saying that a lot of people just loved, which is around agility in the time is your stability in the times of ambiguity. So when things are ambiguous, what gives you stability? Your knowledge that, hey, I can make this decision, and I can move here, and I can figure things out, and we can work together as a team, and it's always about the team. So that's one thing I'll leave you with. And then the second thing I'll leave you with is, when I look back on my career and I think about opportunities to move people up, and where do you stretch people, it's like, well, can we put them in places that people succeed with like a 50-50 rule of thumb? Like, hey, they know 50% and they're going to learn 50%. So whether it's a new skill set, a new function, a new business, or whatever it is. So just in the times that we're going through as we think about modern ways of working and transformation, think about 50% of, hey, I've got this skill set. I know how to read a pro forma. Or, hey, I can figure out a sheet. I'm a great learner, right? I can bring the team along. So whatever that 50% that's yours, and then think about the 50% that's new. Okay, I don't know how to go to City Hall, and whose door do I knock on, right? So those are just some opportunities for growth.
Great. Well, we have a couple of minutes left for questions from the audience. Are there any questions right now? Otherwise, I can go into my final question and pop back. But does anyone, just off the top of their head, have any questions for our panelists that they want to offer? Yes?
You guys talked a lot about success and talked about COVID. How has the Great Resignation impacted your success?
Was that for me?
Anyone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, trying to think, firm-wide, we've had quite a bit of change. I wouldn't say there's been a great resignation. We still have, engineering in general for the last several years has been talent deprived. This has only escalated that, along with, all of a sudden work coming out of the sky. But surprisingly, we've done pretty well with talent acquisition. I think we've hired 100 people in the last year, which for a firm, I think we're 280 or something now. Now we lost some people too, but it's definitely harder. I mean, when I started, you were the person applying, competing for this position. Now we're competing for talent. It's definitely completely turned. So it's a whole lot harder. You have to be an employer of choice, and really it's good for any organization anyway, but to have that engagement and retaining employees, retaining good employees is so much more important. Yeah, people stay with GRAEF forever, so we don't have a lot of GRAEF resignation.
I'd offer that I'm in a mode of building a new team. We had several retirements because of COVID, of my dollar, and that has allowed us to look at our structure a little bit differently. So we're in the mode right now of hiring basically a whole new team. Corporate communications at Northwestern Mutual has about 80 people. And I would say I walk down the halls now when I'm in the office, and I see new faces every day. And so, kind of going back to your point, it's so important to retain people and make them feel that value and bringing the new people on, and some of which are hybrid. And so making sure you're establishing that relationship with them, through Zoom. But it gives me, great honor when we're able to move people from an internship role to a contractor role to a full-time employee. And that's where I get a lot of satisfaction.
I would add to that as well, and from a different perspective, is my business plan was very aware of the Great Resignation, and particularly how it impacted women and women with children, with the rise of childcare costs, the work-life balance and the demands on a mom, and all of the other demands on a mom, in addition to, being the leader of the household. And so how could I help foster a space where parents and mothers especially can come together and work with each other and maybe find different modes of employment or tapping into their skill set. So unfortunately, I'm here to scoop up and help foster a space for all of those people who are reflecting on their career and really where their value is.
Any other questions? No? Okay, well, just maybe I want to just do like a speed round of going into the kind of the next year of your careers. Just in a few words, what are you thinking about? What are you reaching for? You know, as we kind of come out of the pandemic, slowly inching our way out. Yeah, what's kind of on your mind, future looking? We can just start with Jennifer again. Yeah.
I hope for stability. I hope to be able to have it, right, 1 year from today, I'm able to say I have a fully staffed team with strong leaders in place to excel, giving them opportunities to continue to learn, and for myself, you know, learning as well. Business changes every single day. I want to make sure that I'm tracking to that too.
My life has been centered around like 5-year, 10-year plans, and I think right now I'm challenging myself to focus on tomorrow and focus on 10 days in front of me. I think it has served me well to be so future-minded, but right now just recognizing that this phase of my life is going to change day to day and month to month, and finding comfort in that.
So my current motto is moving the middle. So bringing the middle portion of our organization, elevating it so that in this 3 to 5 year window, when so many of us are going to be retiring, planned retirements, they're ready, and you know, we can get them in these positions where they're going to have all these opportunities. So it's moving the middle.
I would think about, excuse me, the next year in 2 dimensions. One is for Silver Rock, my firm, is how do we grow and grow in a way that's really meaningful. And the growth is really so that we can really help our clients achieve, you know, their best and to bring others into the fold. So that's the firm side. And then for myself personally, I love to also, again, the theme of growth, think about kind of what else and how else I can evolve as an individual, as a human being. And from a professional standpoint, I love to kind of see myself even more board work, because I really enjoy that space and feel very called to it.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for sharing your insight, your journeys, your vulnerability with us. We really appreciate you being here, and thank you all too for listening in and being here. I hope you enjoy the rest of the breakout sessions. I think there's one more right after this. There's a few different options, so go check those out. And thank you so much